How Mark Carney shut down Trump's plan to take Alberta. Donald Trump believed Alberta was the perfect prize, an oil-rich province, a conservative population angry at Ottawa, a growing separatist movement looking for outside support. To Trump's administration, Alberta looked less like part of Canada and more like America's next strategic acquisition. Behind closed doors, Trump's State Department quietly met with Alberta separatists. His Treasury Secretary openly praised Alberta as a natural partner of the United States, and separatist leaders believed Washington was ready to bankroll Alberta's break from Canada with an astonishing $500 billion credit line. Everything appeared perfectly aligned. But then Mark Carney made one strategic move and the entire plan collapsed. The secret meetings Washington didn't want public. According to Financial Times, senior officials from Trump's State Department met 3 times with members of the Alberta Prosperity Project, a far-right group pushing for an Alberta independence referendum. Those meetings were not casual or symbolic. Participants included Mitch Sylvester, a key figure in the separatist movement, Jeffrey Rath, a United Conservative Party constituency president, a lawyer representing Alberta's independence campaign. All of them traveled to Washington for discussions with U.S. officials. At the same time, Trump's Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent went public, calling Alberta a natural partner of the United States. He praised Alberta's resources, described Albertans as fiercely independent, and even referenced the idea of a sovereignty referendum, saying people wanted what the United States has. That message was not accidental. The $500 billion promise. Jeffrey Rath later confirmed the meetings and posted publicly that the separatist group planned to request a $500 billion credit line from the U.S. Treasury to support the transition to an independent Alberta. This wasn't speculation, it was an organized proposal. Separatist leaders genuinely believed Washington would finance Alberta's separation from Canada, and the timing fit a disturbing pattern. Trump's bigger strategy. This wasn't just about Alberta. Trump had already threatened Greenland with military pressure, publicly suggested Canada should become the 51st state, and spoke openly about expanding American control over strategic resources. Meeting with Alberta separatists and dangling massive financial support followed the same logic. Take the oil without taking the whole country. Alberta, long frustrated with federal energy policy and revenue sharing, seemed like the weakest link. Canada reacts. That's treason. When news of the meetings reached Canada, the response was explosive. British Columbia Premier David Eby appeared visibly shaken at a press conference. His voice trembled as he said, "To go to a foreign country and ask for assistance in breaking up Canada, there is an old-fashioned word for that, and that word is treason." The shock wasn't just about foreign interference, it was about how close the plan had come to succeeding. Mark Carney's one move that changed everything. Then came Mark Carney. Instead of threats, outrage, or crackdowns, Carney did something far more effective. He delivered a strategic agreement that addressed what Alberta actually wanted: economic respect, fairer treatment within the Federation, a serious voice in national policy. No dramatic speeches, no public panic, just substance. And it worked. The turning point. Almost overnight, momentum shifted. More than 456,000 Albertans signed petitions declaring they wanted to remain Canadian. The separatist movement collapsed. The $500 billion American promise became meaningless. Washington's leverage evaporated. Alberta chose Canada.
Canada draws the line on foreign interference. British Columbia Premier David Eby refused to even call the separatist leaders Albertans. He said it was completely inappropriate for anyone to seek foreign assistance to weaken Canada or break up the country. He was blunt. Going to a foreign power to ask for help dismantling Canada crossed a red line. The rest of the country reacted with shock. Ontario Premier Doug Ford urged national unity, while Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew used humor to make the point unmistakably clear. He joked that if Manitoba ever held a referendum on staying in Canada, the ballot options would be yeah and heck yeah. The message from across the country was unified and firm. Seeking American help, especially from a Trump administration openly threatening Canadian sovereignty, was unacceptable. Carney's calm but unmistakable warning to Washington. Carney responded carefully but decisively. He said, "I expect the United States administration to respect Canadian sovereignty. I am always clear with President Trump to that effect." The language was diplomatic. The meaning was not. Carney was telling Washington to stop interfering, stop meeting with separatists, and stop offering financial incentives to break up Canada. Even Alberta's premier drew the line. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith, despite her pro-Trump reputation, despite visiting Mar-a-Lago in January 2025, despite her friendly relationship with Trump, also rejected American involvement. Smith stated that the United States should confine any discussion about Alberta's democratic process strictly to Albertans and Canadians. Even she acknowledged that American interference in a potential referendum was unacceptable. That mattered. The separatist reality, loud but small. The Alberta Prosperity Project needed 177,000 signatures by May to force a referendum. On paper, it seemed achievable. Anger at Ottawa was real. Mitch Sylvester traveled the province giving presentations. Rallies drew crowds. Make Alberta Great Again hats appeared. American flags were sometimes visible. But the numbers told a very different story. A major poll found that only 19% of Albertans supported immediate independence. Just 1 in 5 would actually vote yes. Many people signing petitions were not true separatists. They were symbolic protesters, sending a warning to Ottawa, using the referendum threat as leverage rather than genuinely wanting to leave Canada. When separatism was tested at the ballot box, it collapsed. The Republican Party of Alberta ran a candidate in a by-election last June and was decisively defeated. The New Democrats received more votes than the separatist candidate in a riding where independence sentiment was supposedly strong. The movement was loud, but it was a minority. Carney gives Alberta what it actually wanted. Carney understood something Trump didn't. This wasn't about ideology, it was about economics and respect. Carney delivered everything Danielle Smith had demanded in her 9-point ultimatum, which had warned of a national unity crisis. The federal government suspended the emissions cap on oil and gas in Alberta, paused clean electricity regulations, prioritized the Carbon Capture Pathways Alliance, set to become the largest such facility in the world, signaled flexibility on the Northwest Coast tanker ban, potentially allowing oil shipments. Smith called it the end of the dark times. She said the Trudeau era made Alberta's natural wealth feel trapped and wasted. Now, Ottawa had agreed to stop throttling the energy industry. An unthinkable moment in Alberta politics. What happened next was unprecedented. Carney received standing ovations twice at the Calgary Chamber of Commerce. That was unheard of for a Liberal Prime Minister in Alberta. The agreement worked. Smith openly said she wanted to show Albertans that Canada can work, that staying in the Federation delivers real results. The pipeline that changed everything. Today, 93% of Canadian oil exports go to the United States, according to Canada's energy regulator. That makes Alberta dangerously dependent on a single market, one subject to American politics and Trump's threats. A pipeline to the Pacific changes everything. Asia needs oil. Japan, South Korea, India, and China are growing economies with massive energy demand. Alberta's oil sands produce heavy crude perfectly suited to Asian refineries. Diversifying exports means freedom. Freedom from American leverage, freedom from political blackmail. Why Trump's plan failed. Trump believed money could buy provinces. Carney proved respect holds more power. By addressing Alberta's real grievances, Canada collapsed the separatist movement from within. The $500 billion promise became irrelevant. The foreign interference failed. This is how Canada kept Alberta. This is how Trump's plan died. And this is why provinces that feel respected cannot be bought.
Why the pipeline changed everything. Alberta is a landlocked province. Without access to tidewater, it cannot reach global energy markets. Yes, the Trans Mountain Pipeline exists, but it is already operating at full capacity. That bottleneck keeps Alberta trapped, forced to sell most of its oil to a single buyer, the United States. A new pipeline changes the entire equation. It allows Alberta to diversify its customers, reduce dependence on a U.S. market, sell oil at global prices, not discounted American rates. Premier Danielle Smith emphasized this point repeatedly. She said the pipeline would reduce Canada's reliance on the United States and make Alberta economically stronger. The irony was impossible to miss. Independence from the United States made Alberta far less interested in leaving Canada to join the United States. Why Trump's $500 billion wasn't enough. Trump's administration floated a staggering $500 billion offer to separatists, but access to Asian markets is worth far more. Over decades, diversified global exports mean trillions of dollars in revenue, permanent economic security, and control over Alberta's future. That long-term stability outweighs any one-time American payment. Money contempt. Markets create sovereignty. Carney's message, taking back control. Carney framed the agreement not as a concession, but as a reclaiming of national ambition. He declared, "We used to explore in this country. We will chart new courses again. We used to build in this country. We will build big, we will build fast, we will build bold again. We used to take risks in this country. We will step up to the plate again. It is our country. It is our future. We are taking back control to build Alberta strong, to build Canada strong." This was economic nationalism, Canadian style. Build Canadian infrastructure, control Canadian resources, export to the world on Canadian terms. Then came the most decisive moment. Former Alberta politician and pro-unity activist Thomas Lukashuk launched the Alberta Forever Canada Citizen Initiative. Elections Alberta approved the application on June 30th, and signature collection began on August 2nd in Edmonton. The question was simple. Do you agree that Alberta should remain in Canada? No ambiguity, no ideology, just a direct choice. The initiative required 293,976 signatures, 20% of registered voters, a higher threshold than the separatist petition. On October 28th, Lukashuk announced the results. 456,000 signatures collected. That was more than double the requirement, 62% above the threshold. At the same time, the separatist petition was still struggling to reach 178,000. The contrast was overwhelming. A province united. The signatures came from every corner of Alberta, urban and rural, Calgary and Edmonton, Red Deer, Lethbridge, Grand Prairie, and smaller towns, young and old, workers and retirees, conservatives and liberals. Different people, one conclusion. Alberta belongs in Canada. Separation would be an economic and political disaster. Trump's interest was seen not as an opportunity, but as a threat. Why the separatist movement collapsed? Carney's November agreement removed the core grievance, the feeling that Alberta was ignored. Under Trudeau, pipelines were blocked and energy felt trapped. Carney met all 9 demands of Danielle Smith, proving Ottawa was willing to work with Alberta. The province no longer felt cornered. At the same time, Trump's threats backfired spectacularly. When Trump talked about annexation and met with separatists, Canadian nationalism surged. Separatism began to look less like protest and more like betrayal. David Ebbie's use of the word treason resonated deeply. And risk mattered. Independence meant years of uncertainty, negotiating debt and assets, redrawing treaties, economic instability. Staying in Canada with a new pipeline and guaranteed growth suddenly looked like the safest and smartest choice.
Why the choice became obvious.
By the end, the choice facing Albertans was no choice at all. The separatist movement lacked credibility from the start. It had no elected officials, no former premiers, and no serious political leadership. The Republican Party of Alberta held 0 seats. The movement was driven by activists, not institutions. By contrast, the pro-unity side had legitimacy. Forever Canada was backed by Thomas Lukashuk, a former Alberta cabinet minister. To voters, that mattered. One side looked like protest politics, the other looked like responsible governance. Why a referendum is unlikely and unwinnable? The Alberta Prosperity Project still has until May to collect enough signatures to force a referendum. As of now, it remains far short. Even if it somehow reaches the threshold, Premier Danielle Smith is not required to call the vote. She can refuse, pointing directly to the Forever Canada petition as evidence that Albertans want unity. And if a referendum were held, the separatists face an even bigger obstacle. Under Canada's Clarity Act, separation requires a clear majority on a clear question. The House of Commons decides what counts as a clear expression of will. Against 456,000 signatures supporting unity compared to 178,000 for separation, the outcome is obvious. Victory would be mathematically and politically impossible. Trump's promised $500 billion means nothing if the referendum fails. American money cannot buy independence when the population rejects it. Trump's fundamental miscalculation. Alberta was supposed to be an easy target, a conservative province, angry at a liberal federal government, rich in oil and gas, landlocked, dependent on pipelines through other provinces. Trump's officials assumed that anger at Ottawa meant a desire to leave Canada. That assumption was wrong. Albertans didn't want to become Americans. They wanted respect, economic development, and control over their resources within Canada. Trump offered a one-time payout. Carney offered permanent access to global markets worth trillions while keeping Canadian citizenship, healthcare, political stability, and sovereignty. It wasn't a close comparison. The American narrative collapses. U.S. national security analyst Brandon Weichert appeared on Steve Bannon's show claiming Trump's 51st state talk was really aimed at Alberta. He suggested an independence vote would lead to U.S. recognition and eventual American statehood. That analysis ignored reality. It ignored the Forever Canada petition, polling showing 80% of Albertans oppose independence, and Carney's strategy of resolving grievances inside the Federation. It analyzed Alberta as a resource map, not as a society.
How Carney actually defeated separatism. Mark Carney didn't defeat separatism by confrontation. He defeated it by competence. Alberta wanted a pipeline. Carney delivered it. The emissions cap suspended. Carney suspended it. Respect for the oil industry. Carney gave it. The standing ovations Carney received at the Calgary Chamber of Commerce proved the strategy worked. Trump threatened an entire country. Carney worked with a province. Trump met secretly with a separatist minority. Carney negotiated openly with Alberta's elected government. Trump's approach united Canadians against him. Carney's approach united Alberta with Canada. Why Trump's strategy backfired. Trump's interference disgusted Albertans. Meeting with separatists, offering money to break up an allied nation, and talking openly about annexation made separatism look like betrayal. David Eby's use of the word treason resonated because it captured how voters felt. That backlash helped drive the 456,000 signatures supporting unity. Trump didn't weaken Canada, he strengthened Canadian nationalism. Other premiers noticed. In Quebec, where separatism remains strong and the Parti Québécois leads polls, Carney's success with Alberta offers a clear roadmap. Address real grievances, make the federation work, and unity follows. Where Trump's dream finally died. Trump's dream of a 51st state began with all of Canada, then narrowed to Greenland, then focused specifically on Alberta. He believed conservative anger meant separatism, oil wealth meant vulnerability, money could override identity. That dream died on November 27th when Carney and Smith signed their agreement.
It died again when Forever Canada reached 456,000 signatures. It died every time polls showed Albertans rejecting independence by 4-to-1 margins. Trump's administration met with separatists, praised Alberta, offered enormous financial support, and got nothing. The final lesson. Mark Carney didn't save Canada with slogans. He saved it by listening, negotiating, and delivering results. He showed that federalism works when provinces are respected, that unity is stronger than money, that pipelines beat promises, and that sovereignty cannot be bought. Trump tried to take Alberta. Carney made staying Canadian the better deal. 456,000 Albertans signed their answer, and the province Trump thought he could peel away remains firmly part of Canada, stronger, more secure, and looking outward to the world instead of south to Washington.